Hi, another book video. Um, and guess what? It's another pandemic book video. Um, it's yeah, but this one again is not about COVID pandemic. It is about a different type of pandemic. It actually takes place after the COVID pandemic, so they're both um, both showcased in this book. It's called The Violence by Delilah Dawson. I've never read anything by her before. She apparently writes Star Wars books. Never read one of those either. Um, and what the violence is a pandemic that in the beginning they're not sure of um, how it's transmitted, and they don't have a vaccine for it. Doesn't that sound familiar? And no cure for it in the beginning. What it basically does is people um, are infected by this. When they get upset, they have to kill something, and it will possess them until they've murdered something. And that premise, because it's just a one shot thing, I'd have to kill one living thing, and then they come out of it and they don't remember anything that happened, but it's never more than one. That sounds like bad Harry Potter fan fiction I read a while ago. A long while ago. But anyway, what that is just a frame, is just a reason to write the actual story, which again, I wish these authors would just like have the guts to write what they want to write about, instead of, oh, I'm going to write about the pandemic. I'm going to make it topical. What it's actually about is women dealing with domestic violence, which apparently was like personal to the author, and without the hokey, um, pandemic frame, I think would have been a fantastic book, but also less opportunities for sort of a cathartic fantasy of how to cope with a abusive partner, which probably gives away quite a bit. I mean, it's wild. Oh, and my list, but I mean, my lists of what I'm supposed to have, reading. Let's see if I can speak English. Here is dwindling, because these are all sort of like the same kind of stories over and over. This is why I never worked in publishing. God, can you imagine? Can you imagine the slush piles? The same ideas over and over and over again. It's just a matter of finding the ones that are the best version of the same basic plot. Oh my God, I'd go mad. Anyway, is a survival story. Which I don't think it really, I mean, it's very fictionalized, but kind of, yeah. I mean, especially if you drop out the pandemic crap, because these women are trying to survive the abuse of their partners. And there's many versions of that in this book. That would be my only disclaimer. It actually was really good. And for writing, again, I said this person made Star Wars books before, and they put in their time. They got their chops as far as having a story that keeps going. One of the best sort of training I ever did, which was so surprising to me. I mean, I was like, what? I read a really basic how to write a movie script manual. I mean, we're talking like 150 pages. Brilliant. Because it wasn't just, these are the parts of the book, this is how you write a good sentence, this is, how you do a plot. But this story, this advice was how to engage a reader, and how to, they called it upping the ante on a regular basis. This book did this. I mean, there was no problem whatsoever with just having a massive, huge, shift halfway in the middle, randomly. It didn't feel like it was sort of plotted and paced. I mean, just massive changes. Like, we're going to change our location. We're going to, the thing is, okay. So, like, for example, that book that I read where there was the super violent pandemic, and everybody was in the like Facebook type or whatever company. That one started with people being alone and going around and collecting people and becoming a group. And it was group dynamics and how do we make a new society. This one started with a family that was together, and the situations that happened to them caused them to break apart. This was an excellent writing technique, because basically whenever the story started to bog, whenever something closely resembling what I call the evil middle would happen, the writing would just stop, and then you would go to check in on the next character, that these people were supposed to be together but they weren't, and they had a completely radically divergent lifestyles when they should have been together. And what decision did they make starting from the same position? And it would flip between character and character and character. That was great, because it never, like I said, it never bogged down. It's exactly what the screenwriting manual suggested you do, which is throw in another monkey wrench and keep upping it and keep upping it. I did think that the ending was a little abrupt and a little pat, and did sort of come out of nowhere, because it's like, wait a minute, you're telling every step of the way, every motivation, and then suddenly there's a character that you completely dropped that appears and causes a final gigantic huge bit of chaos. Maybe there was like one sentence sort of like alluding to that. It also was like, oh duh, obviously that's what but to the extent that it happened, like, how did that happen? There were a little bit of holes there getting from to the very, very end, but other than that, again, kind of gruesome, kind of disgusting, kind of hateful, but a really good story if you can get past all the pandemic crap. I mean, domestic violence in this book, but really great characters, really well paced. Overall, a good example of how to write a sort of a popular novel. Like I said, totally annoyed with the pandemic crap at this point. Other than that, but I can't even count how many I've written. God, no, never. Okay, I shouldn't say never. No. No. I've read enough of them to know that no, I would never torture anybody. if I ever had to write something like that, I wouldn't let anybody read it. I had to get it out of my system because there's just so many of them. Anyway, yeah, I can't. I've lost track of how many I've read, so that's really annoying to me. But um, again, having starting with that. I'm going to write a pandemic story. Let's go from there. Um, it was a pretty skilled um, attempt at it, and um, again, I would have been really interested in seeing the story without that pandemic frame. Um, I mean, again, it what that frame is doing is basically letting people take things from 0 to 100 like immediately, and it's allowing characters to do things out of character. So you can set up a history that is, oh, this person is very meek and they go along with everything, and then there's a pandemic and then everything changes and people do something radically different. I don't know. I did not experience that when we had the pandemic. Maybe people did. I don't think people change their entire personality, and that's basically what these authors are suggesting. Pandemics will come along and people will change everything about themselves because of the pandemic. No, that's why it's annoying. But anyway, good book.